But what I want to do is move over to the Division II side of things and talk about these regional rankings, right? And if we let's see if I can pull these up here for there we go, so we can all take a look at these together. Let's start with Super Region number 1. And for those maybe not familiar, the super regions are divided up by conference. So you'll see in here we've got the GMAC, the PSAC. Looks like we've got the MEC and the NE10, or the 4 conferences represented here in Super Region number 1. And then the top 10 teams are selected by committee. And it doesn't have anything to do with, if you're winning the conference or whatever. There's no automatic bids. It's not exactly how this works. It's a little bit different than Division 3 getting those bids. So taking a look at Super Region number 1. This region, what stood out to me is that it's extremely top-heavy. I mean, Slippery Rock and Tiffin are 2 really damn good football teams. That's not taking anything away from teams like Charleston and East Stroudsburg, who've put together really respectable years. But when you look at the bottom half of this list, it just doesn't wow me as far as some of the depth we'll see from some of these regions going forward. New Haven has definitely struggled this year. The NE10 is really just not been a great strength of schedule conference. Shepherd, although they do have some very quality wins, I will not take that away from them. Not the Shepherd team we've seen in the past. Fairmont State, again, kind of in that same area. Kutztown, their defense has been on fire. And, defense travels. That's part of what wins you games in the playoffs. If that is the case for the Bears over there, we could see them playing, deep into this one. But their offense has been quite lackluster in a couple performances. That scares me for them. They also had a kind of an uncharacteristic loss to Assumption to open the year, and then another one kind of halfway through it to, I believe, ESU. California Vulcans, kind of the same boat, just consistency, right? Just consistency. And Frostburg State and that MEC. Notice, though, a couple names not on here. I think Notre Dame is probably a pretty big one. Notre Dame College have been having a uncharacteristic down year for the Falcons there out of the MEC. I think losing both to Fairmont and Frostburg State. I mean, maybe even to Charleston as well. But this region, like I said, pretty top-heavy. Wouldn't be surprised if a couple of these teams, you have like a sleeper team or 2 in here, though, that could definitely surprise. Slippery Rock and Tiffin, though, definitely a cut above the rest. Moving on to Super Region 2, though, you'll see this is basically the Gulf South region. Also, we've got the SEAC in here, a couple other spots, but the SAC, there we go. But Benedict number 1, and I understand why Benedict is number 1, because they're undefeated. They have an unblemished record compared to 2, 3, and 4, all Gulf South squads. But when you watch these games, and I've gotten to tune into at least most of these teams, I don't see Benedict coming out of this region, and that's just my personal opinion. I think their strength of schedule has people maybe fooled a little bit. We saw their game again. I believe it was against Miles where they had quite the scare, and when I see these Delta State, Valdosta State, West Florida, like those Gulf South teams that have been beating up on each other the last couple of weeks, the type of football they've been playing heading into the playoffs feels like they've been playing playoffs the last 2 weeks. Like, these teams are well-oiled. They're ready to go. And I think these Gulf South teams are definitely ready to surprise. And now you're down to number 5. Lenoir-Rhyne, who was the number 7 team in the country last week, they get upset by Wingate. Their offense, incredibly high-powered. They get that thing done through the air. We'll see if they can continue to do that and rebound after the loss to the Bulldogs. But for me, 1 through 5 in Super Region 2, we've already gotten the ceiling is a lot higher than Super Region 1. I think there's a lot of great competition here, not even to mention teams like Mars Hill, Fayetteville State, West Georgia, Fort Valley, and Virginia Union, who have respectfully put together some quality seasons. But, for me, those Gulf South teams, I think, are really going to make some noise here. Benedict and Lenoir-Rhyne certainly in the mix. Team like Mars Hill has had some really quality wins. But you talk about like a Fayetteville State or a Fort Valley. Again, I don't think the strength of schedule is there to really warrant the record's there, but they haven't played the same schedule that some of these other squads have. Moving on to Super Region 3, though, and I think this is where you get the best region, top to bottom, competition-wise. Pittsburg State, Harding, Grand Valley, Central Missouri, Indianapolis, Davenport. Then you go Washita, Ferris, Missouri Western, and Southern Arkansas. Holy shit, basically, that's 1 through 10. 1 through 4 here, trying to think. It depends on the rankings you go by, but these teams are like all top 10 teams. Indianapolis, obviously an unblemished record over there in the GLVC. The rest of that conference has absolutely fallen to shit. It seems like Truman State getting upset by Southwest Baptist. We thought the Bulldogs were going to give Indy a run. They did. It was a competitive game. Quincy has kind of fallen off as well. Indianapolis, the sole one left over there in the Great Lakes Valley Conference. That's not taking anything away from them. They're a damn good football team. That's why they're on this list. But otherwise, you talk about Pittsburgh State, that's already beaten Central Missouri this year. You talk about a Harding team that's already beaten Ouachita Baptist and beaten Southern Arkansas, right? And these squads, I mean, this is going to make for some really, really fun football. Not only that, you think about the style of football from these teams. Teams like Pittsburgh State, Harding, Grand Valley, Ferris, right? These squads that are just uber physical, and they just play it, and they win and they lose at the line of scrimmage. Well, Harding, I mean, they might not even throw the fucking ball. They might just run it the whole time. But that's what they can do, and they've been able to do it very successfully. You can see there in the GAC. By the way, conferences here, look, we've got MIAA, we've got the GLIAC, obviously, the GLVC, and then the GAC, the Great American Conference, in Super Region number 3. And, again, this is the most depth to me. Ferris State, the reigning back-to-back national champion at number 8, that's all you need to tell me. Right? And they're going to have a chance this week to really prove themselves against a Davenport team that is ranked higher than them right now because of that unblemished record. Davenport finishing the last 2 weeks against Ferris and GV respectfully. Let's see if the Panthers can make some noise. Last year, absolutely not. Horrendous. This Davenport team, I'll tell you firsthand, better team than last year. Much improved, more well-rounded, seem to be able to close games and finish in tight situations. We saw that last week against Saginaw Valley. So, to me, the strongest super region right here. Would not be surprised at all to see whoever comes out of here take it all. That brings us to our last super region, though, highlighted by the number 1 squad in the country right now. All respect to the Ore Diggers and Colorado Mines. They're followed closely by the team they just blew out at home in Western Colorado. And then you've got UTPB finally getting, I think, the respect they deserve, the Falcons up there. And then you've got Central Washington, the NSIC, 4 squads right there in Augustana, Mankato, Bemidji, Wayne State, followed by Angelo and Texas A&M Kingsville. This one is interesting. Mines, Colorado, make a lot of sense. UTPB, their only loss in the year is actually to that Mountaineer team right ahead of them. Central Washington has been lights out. Guess what? UTPB, Central Washington, they play last week of the year. We're going to see who comes out on top of that one. A 2-loss UTPB team. Try and say that 3 times fast. Let's see what the committee does if that happens. I think they take that Central Washington game. It's going to be very competitive. CW, their defense has been incredible, especially their defensive secondary. Talk about Tanner Volk, a guy who has, looking to set some records as far as like interceptions and other things go in that defensive secondary for, I believe, the Wolves. But this it's going to be, there's a lot of parity that could go on here because you got this Augustana team that is 1 loss to that Wayne State squad. It's a 3-loss Wayne State team, but they've already made it through the gauntlet of the NSIC playing Bemidji and Mankato and Augustana, right? Not to say they don't have any like good games on their schedule left, but you've made it through kind of the dogfight situation of that conference. And that's where teams like, I believe it was, and I'm totally blanking, Mankato, like Mankato still has Duluth next week. And now you're thinking like, Duluth just played Bemidji hella tight. And that is going to be something where, if Mankato loses that game, then you have a 2-loss team. But then you look at the bottom of this list. You've got Angelo State and Texas A&M Kingsville with 3 losses to each of their names. I'm taking a 2-loss Mankato team over any of those squads anyways. I think Mankato is the lock for this. I think we're going to have a minimum of 3 NSIC teams, I think there will be 4, again, as there were last year. Just because the Lone Star this year, the bottom half of the Lone Star just has not done it. Angelo State is kind of disappointed, albeit their losses are 2 very quality football teams. A couple of them on this list, right? Kingsville, kind of in the same fashion. We thought their defense was going to come out, maybe surprise some people this year out of that conference. But the Lone Star right now, not feeling very balanced. It feels like this region could be also pretty top heavy as well. But any of those NSIC teams, could certainly make a run at it. So that's at least my kind of quick breakdown and synopsis of the regional rankings. I would love to hear what you guys think. Please comment, reply. I don't know, rip me a new one on the socials. I don't care. I feel like as far as the actual picks go from here, I feel like it's pretty spot on, and it's their job. It should be. But as someone who follows all this pretty closely, as I hope you can at least pick up, I feel like they did a good job of selecting these. And what's important to note is that these are the standings as of now. This has no bearing on the actual playoffs. Like, this is if the playoffs were to happen tomorrow, this would be the setup. We've still got 2 more weeks here before a lot of things are going to shake up. That Ferris State-Davenport game is a great example of that. That could certainly shake up these rankings a lot, even though I think both those teams, they might even just flip-flop spots. But, very interesting spot here. Another one, Missouri Western's got Pittsburgh State next week. Pittsburgh State, do they take their first loss of the year against a really solid Griffins team? Or are they going to bounce Missouri Western out of this top 10? I guess we'll see.